coffee?
Hello, how are you today?
I'm fine, very good, thank you.
So I'm currently back in Perth, Western Australia, staying in an apartment located at East Perth. And we just had a beautiful red sky as the sun was setting. It's fading rapidly now. As flight crew, we are exempt from the 14-day mandatory quarantine that applies to international travellers arriving in Australia. They get taken to designated hotels and are placed under guard and not allowed to leave for 14 days. Using a bit of common sense though, I am in self-isolation until my next flight, which will be back to Sydney. So what I have drawn here is the Great Circle route between Colorado, USA and Perth, Australia. That is the most northern red line. The other line represents the path we actually flew. Now, if the aircraft had 10,000 nautical miles range, we could fly a Great Circle route all the way to Perth, but it doesn't. So we had to stop twice to refuel. The first stop was in Honolulu, Hawaii, and the second stop was in Tontuta, New Caledonia. From there, we flew to Perth, Western Australia. So just a few quick photos from the trip home. This is a screenshot of the iPad showing Tropical Cyclone Harold. And you can see here that we had made a very slight left diversion just to avoid that thunderstorm. This is approaching Hawaii, closer to Hawaii. There's our pretty ground handler in Hawaii. This is one of the little islands on the way to Noumea, and a nice atoll. This clip is while refueling in Noumea. And as you can see, we were being watched by police and the ground handlers were all wearing protective masks. So in this video, we're going to look at four basic concepts. The first one being the Great Circle. A great circle is the shortest distance between 2 points on a sphere. So if we're navigating around the surface of the Earth, which is a sphere, flying a great circle will be the shortest way to travel. The second point is a rum line. A rum line is a line on a sphere that is crossing lines of longitude at the same angle. They can be quite different to a great circle depending upon where you are on the Earth, but as we will see, there are in fact a number of great circles that are also rum lines. Third, we're going to look at the Mercator Map projection. This is something that many of us are familiar with, and see how that is actually produced from the globe Earth. And finally, we're going to talk about cabotage. And this is why some airline routes go the long way. When you look at them on a map, it doesn't make immediate sense. But when you understand what cabotage is, it makes perfect sense. So first, the Great Circle, the shortest distance between 2 points on a sphere. How can we determine which line is a great circle on a sphere? It's actually quite straightforward. Now the concept of a great circle is really quite simple. Here we have an orange. It's not a perfect sphere, but if you imagine we're looking at a perfect sphere, a great circle will cut a sphere in half. So if you imagine that path being traced on the surface of a perfect sphere that cuts the sphere in half will be a great circle. If I cut here, I have one small portion and one large portion. That is not a great circle. Similarly, I can cut this way, one small portion and one large portion. Again, not a great circle. A great circle will always cut the sphere perfectly in half, and that is the shortest distance between 2 points on the surface of a sphere. A line joining the 2 points that if you cut through that line would cut the sphere perfectly in half. So the Great Circle path can be determined by simply cutting a sphere in half. And it really doesn't matter on a perfect sphere which angle you cut. As long as you cut that sphere in half, you have traced a great circle across the surface. As I have demonstrated in previous videos, real aircraft flight plans rely on these great circles to determine distances and directions between subsequent waypoints on a flight plan. Here is a good diagram that shows how this can occur. The black dots represent the waypoints, and you can see they are joined by great circle lines. And that means the distances between them will be the shortest possible on a sphere. Naturally, to fly the aircraft efficiently, you want to fly the shortest distance around the surface of the Earth. And that is why great circles are so important to aviation and marine navigation. So we're going to jump to point number 3, the Mercator Map projection. And we're going to look at how this is produced from a spherical Earth. Now this is relevant to the Rum Line because on a Mercator Map, a Rum Line will appear as a straight line. So the Mercator projection is achieved by placing a cylinder around the spherical Earth with a source of light at the center and projecting the Earth's features onto that cylinder. We can see the continents and the land masses, and when we unroll that cylinder, we now have the Mercator projection. As you can see, the lines of longitude are parallel on this map. And that creates problems in itself because on the real Earth, the lines of longitude converge equally north and south of the equator, meeting at the poles. On the Mercator map, they are parallel at all times. So the amount of distortion on the map increases the further away from the equator that you get. And I think one of the main problems with flat earthers is failing to understand that when you project a globe onto a flat map, you're going to have distortions. And this is why some of the flight paths on a flat map don't really seem to make sense. The only way to represent the real Earth correctly is on a ball. That is the only way we can show the size and the shape and the relative positions of the continents and the oceans accurately. When you project these onto a flat surface, you're going to have distortions, and that affects the appearance of lines such as a great circle and a Rum Line. They look quite different on the Mercator projection to how they do on a globe. So looking at this Mercator projection, if we draw a straight line between 2 points on the map, for example, from Cape Town, South Africa to Sydney, Australia, we will see a straight line on this Mercator map. You might think that this is the shortest distance, but remember, the Mercator map has distortions that increase the further you move away from the equator, north and south of the equator. So a straight line on this Mercator projection is not necessarily the shortest distance between 2 points on the real Earth. There are some cases where this is true. If you're following the equator is a great circle that is also a Rum Line. The other exception is if you're going directly north or south, following one of the lines of longitude, because in this case also a Rum Line is a great circle. However, between any other points where you are not at the equator and you are crossing lines of longitude, a straight line on the Mercator projection is a Rum Line. It is not the shortest distance on the Earth. So looking at point number 2, a Rum Line, a line crossing lines of longitude at the same angle. And remember, in the Mercator map projection, the lines of longitude are all parallel, and therefore a line crossing lines of longitude at the same angle will appear as a straight line on the Mercator map. Here is a good example. From Heathrow to Sydney, Australia, a Rum Line on this Mercator map appears to be a straight line. The Great Circle line, which is actually the shortest distance, appears curved. So without understanding the distortions in this map, this might not immediately make sense. when you start to think in 3 dimensions, it makes perfect sense. So remember, it is all about the distortions that are produced when you project the spherical Earth onto a flat map. The routes are quite different between the Great Circle Line and the Rum Line from London to Sydney, Australia. On the globe, it looks quite different. The Great Circle is the straight line and the Rum Line is curved, and that is why the Great Circle is the shortest distance. Don't be confused by a map that has distortions, producing lines that don't immediately make sense. Remember, the only way to understand correct flight paths is when you plot them accurately on the globe. So let's now take a look at a couple of flat earthers who completely failed to understand the difference between a Rum Line and a Great Circle route. Now this video is on a channel called Conspiracy Katz, and if you haven't seen this channel, I highly recommend checking it out and giving him a subscription, because he produces some excellent flat earth debunking videos. And this one is titled, "This is the worst flat earth video I have ever seen." Let's just play a short part of it.
And it appears that the view of the horizon from a plane isn't the only thing that debunks a globe Earth. Apparently flight paths do as well, as our man is going to go on and explain, until he gets debunked by a member of his own audience.
And your conventional map, let's see what these routes look like. So, here we have Santiago, South America. Yeah? Up to that, the east coast of America, across to the west coast, and down to Sydney. Does that make any sense to you? They're flying twice as... The passengers are, it's taking them best part 3 days to get there. If they can get there in 14 hours, why isn't the plane taking the red line?
Well, there could be a number of reasons a plane is choosing that flight path. For example, economics. Ask yourself, would it be cheaper to have one plane fly all 3 routes, or 3 planes each flying those routes individually? Who knows? But the bigger problem you've got here is that you think the red line is the quickest point between A and B. Now, what you've got to realise is that when we turn a globe into a flat map, you distort the picture. And that means that the fastest path between these 2 points on a globe is anything but your red line.
Conspiracy Katz, you are absolutely 100% correct. This red line is not the shortest distance between Australia and South America. This is clearly a Mercator style map, and therefore this red line, being a straight line, is a Rum Line. It is not the Great Circle path. The Great Circle path is the shortest distance. Now note carefully that this red line runs north of New Zealand. That is significant to what I'm about to show you. We will discuss the route taken by this yellow line when we talk about Cabotage shortly, but let's look at another fail from a flat earther. So remember, this red line goes north of New Zealand. Now the flat earther goes by the name of Ranty. Now he's not a bad bloke. He's actually been quite polite to me any time I visited his channel, but he just makes so many mistakes that I don't watch his channel that often. Otherwise I would end up with bruises all over my face from face palming. And that's not a good look when you greet the passengers at the door. Anyway, what Ranty tried to do was debunk Conspiracy Katz by drawing a line from Sydney to Santiago on Google Earth. Let's just play a short part of his video.
At the bottom here we have Santiago, and up at the top there we have Sydney. So let's scroll in, let's have a look at this. So here we have Santiago. There we go, there's Santiago. And let's have a look. Let's follow the red line, point A to point B. So this is on a globe Earth, by the way. And here we have Sydney. So there we have Sydney. So Santiago to Sydney. Now, Conspiracy Katz said that the red line that he put in is anything but the quickest route on a globe. Well, what do we have here? Here we have Santiago, and here we have Sydney. Now,
Now Ranty, what you have there is a Great Circle. It goes south of New Zealand. This line went north of New Zealand. They're not even close to the same route. This is a Rum Line. This is a Great Circle. This line is the shortest distance between those 2 points. This one is not. Conspiracy Katz was 100% correct, and you don't understand the difference between a Rum Line and a Great Circle. Another flat earth fail. So Conspiracy Katz was kind enough to record a short clip for me for inclusion in this video. I'll play that now. There's a message here for you, Ranty. Pay attention.
Hey Ranty, it's me. Now, I've not seen Wolfie's video yet, but even without watching it, I can tell you now it will have been well researched, it will have been well thought through, and it will have been correct. Now, a blind man on a galloping horse would have seen that the red line drawn by the flat earther in your video went above New Zealand, whereas the red line drawn by you using Google Earth went below New Zealand. And I know by now that you will realise the mistake that you have made. However, Ranty, I have people, subscribers of yours, coming onto my channel telling me how you have debunked me. I have subscribers of yours coming onto my channel to tell me that the flat earth in that video was correct. Now, what I'd like to see from you, Ranty, is a little bit of consideration for these people who have followed you down this dead-end route. What I'd like to see from you is a little bit of honesty, because by now, you clearly do know where you've gone wrong. So wouldn't it be nice if you could make a video and explain to those people who follow you what your mistake was, and maybe together we could lift people up instead of trying to stuff them down a rabbit hole?
So we'll finish off with point number 4, cabotage, why some airline routes go the long way. I have addressed this previously, but it seems once again flat earthers are just not understanding, and they try to argue why aircraft fly these longer routes. This is certainly one of the available routes from Sydney, Australia down to Santiago, Chile. Why do the airlines go this way? Once again, Conspiracy Katz was right when he said economics. 90% of the world's population live north of the equator. So clearly there will be a lot more air traffic north of the equator than there is south. But there is also a very good reason why not all airlines are able to fly the non-stop routes between Sydney and South America, between Sydney and South Africa, and between Africa and South America. Only airlines that are based in any of these countries can fly those routes. And this is due to something called cabotage laws. The overall purpose of cabotage rules are to prohibit foreign aircraft from one country travelling into another country and picking up foreign nationals or citizens of the other foreign country and providing transportation to and between points within that foreign country. And it really is that simple. Only the airlines that have their home base in the southern hemisphere can fly the southern routes non-stop. Qantas can fly to New Zealand, they can fly to South America, they can fly to Africa. South African Airlines can fly to Australia non-stop, they can fly to South America non-stop. Land Chile can fly from South America to New Zealand or to Australia non-stop, and they can also fly non-stop to Africa. But any of the airlines based in the Northern Hemisphere cannot do these southern routes direct. They have to transit via one of their hub airports, and that is why American Airlines, British Airways will not give you non-stop southern flight options. So cabotage rules are a major factor as to why airlines based in the Northern Hemisphere cannot fly the southern non-stop routes. It is why when you book a ticket with an airline like American Airlines, they will take you through the Northern Hemisphere from Sydney down to Santiago. If you want more specific information on the topic, I can strongly recommend this video titled The 5 Freedoms of Aviation, where they go into a lot more detail. I'll place a link in the description below. I'm just heading into the office to pick up my monthly shield check. I wonder if George is working today.